That's Congressman Jim Jordan accusing Democrats of a double standard over their push to strip Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of her committee assignments. The House Rules Committee is meeting today on that very issue. A Wall Street Journal editorial reads, Ms. Greene won, and she deserves to be judged on how she handles herself in office. Democrats also have their share of cranks in the ranks. The point is that ousting a member of Congress has usually been left to the voters, with the exception of criminal behavior. House Democrats were largely silent when squad member Ilhan Omar of Minnesota remarked political support for Israel was, quote, all about the Benjamins, which many saw as anti-Semitic. Some House Republicans are now pushing an amendment to have Omar stripped of her committee posts. And it was pretty much crickets from Democrats back in 2018 when Representative Maxine Waters called for the public harassment of Trump White House officials. Waters chairs the powerful Financial Services Committee. Power panel slides in now. Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union. Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio host and Fox News contributor. Double standard, Matt, or something else?
No, I give Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats great credit. They control almost everything in Washington, but yet they're going to put the Republicans on the defense for one member of Congress. And I think this is all part of this cancel culture. The Democrats are brilliantly actually trying to cancel the election from voters in this district in Georgia by saying their selection of Ms. Greene is somehow beyond the pale. And what I would say is, we didn't endorse her at the American Conservative Union. We were aware of some of these social media posts. She has the right to be asked these questions and to give answers. And if her answers are well outside the mainstream and voters in Georgia decide they don't want her to be their representative, they will send somebody else to Congress. That is how the democratic process works.
Let's talk about what's going on the left side of the aisle and compare these situations, Leslie, because, anti-Semitic remarks count. They're offensive. So should Democrats also be willing to kick out one of their own?
I find, and as you know, I'm half Jewish, I find anti-Semitism very different than threatening lives and threatening violence. I don't want to get any quote wrong. So here we go. Quote, put to death regarding the FBI. This is from Marjorie Taylor Greene, either posting this or liking these posts. Quote, a bullet to the head regarding Speaker Pelosi. Hang 'em regarding former President Obama and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. She berated and called a false flag not only 9/11, Parkland and Sandy Hook.
Leslie, let me just step in a second. Nobody is excusing this behavior. I mean, if you listened to Matt, he said, let the voters figure it out. So is that the case? Do you let the voters figure it out, both for Greene and for Omar and potentially for others? How do you handle it is the point. We all know what egregious behavior, dangerous behavior, offensive behavior, we know what that looks like. The point is, do you let the voters decide, or do you want to take that away from them?
You're not taking away from the voters their vote if she remains a congresswoman, but the Republican Party do have a responsibility not only to their party, but to the nation. And there are Republicans among the family members of Parkland and Sandy Hook who have said that they do not want her on the Education Committee making decisions for our children when they have mocked the deaths of those children, their children.
Maybe the voters want to be represented in that high-profile way. Maybe the
voters didn't vote for her to be on the Education Committee.
Well,
they didn't vote for her to be on the Education Committee. They voted her to be a member of Congress, the people of Georgia.
Leslie, let me speak to this because part of being a member of Congress is your ability to serve on committees. And the thing that's ahistoric here is somehow the Democrats now reaching across the aisle to not unify, by the way, not to unify at all, but to somehow disparage and to remove committee assignments in Kevin McCarthy's conference. And I think it's a very fair challenge to Republicans that part of our responsibility, which I think have risen to this challenge with members of Congress like Steve King and others, there are times to reprimand your own colleague. And if your challenge is to Kevin McCarthy to look at what she has said, I think that's a fair challenge. My answer to that, if that question was posed to me, would be all questions are fair game for politicians. They deserve to give answers about how they think, and then they deserve to vote. This is a premature attempt to smear the entire party after that terrible violence that occurred on the Capitol. I think we're trying to make politics out of things we shouldn't make politics. There's a system. Go through the system. Let her answer. If you don't like her answers, take her on.
Well, and let them all answer. I mean, I don't hear Leslie saying, let's not talk to Ilhan Omar as well. That's not what you said, right, Leslie? So it'd be interesting to hear from these people who are saying these things. I mean, look at how they do it in other countries. Those videos that go viral with them practically pulling weaves and kicking knees in parliamentary. I mean, we've seen those where they can kind of go around these tough issues, and it gets tough on the floor of the House or Senate or whatever. But just to stop the process is what I was asking about. Why can't you let it go forth? And as Matt says, let them answer the questions for their tweets or their thoughts or whatever it is. All right, we'll move on. Thank you both.